Hey everyone, I'm here with my friend Audrey Hayes. Audrey is a violinist, singer, arranger, and composer based in New York City, and a very good friend of mine. She's been featured on stage as a soloist in multiple Broadway productions, and she's played at venues like Carnegie Hall, Radio City Music Hall, Lincoln Center, Beacon Theater, Steinway Hall, the Met Gala. Where has this girl not played? Seriously. I've also performed a lot with Audrey in many live performances and recordings. Actually, she's been in some of my YouTube videos as well here, so you might have seen her. I will put links to those videos in the description below, as well as a link to her YouTube channel, which you should check out as well. Anyway, let's get started. So here's your violin. Tell me a little bit about what kind of violin it is.
Sure. So it's a 2005 modern day instrument made by a maker named Andrea Castellani from Cremona, Italy.
Wow, beautiful. Here, hold it up to the camera so everyone can see. Ooh, very nice. And what's this thing you've got back here?
This is a little piece of non-slip fabric.
It's the stuff that goes in your drawers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, to keep your socks in place.
And a rubber band. Okay, we know those materials. Is it more
It's just to make the violin not slip around on the collarbone and the shoulder.
That makes sense. So a lot of instruments are made in Cremona, Italy, right?
Yes, a lot of stringed instruments particularly, and it's a big place. It's the place to go.
Is there any reason why that area is so
Well, there's
special?
a history there. A lot of the great violin makers that you probably heard of, like Guarneri and Stradivarius, they were based in Cremona, Italy, and so there's a rich history of violin making there and a lot of interesting theories about the wood from that region of Italy.
Interesting. And how much does like an average violin cost of sort of a typical professional violinist?
Well, it can cost, you can buy an instrument from a factory for $500.
And it'll sound pretty good, or?
Probably not.
Okay.
But
So if you're like a really serious player, you need something better than that.
A little, yes. So
What's like the minimum you need if you're like a professional?
I would say, anywhere from $7,000 you might be able to find something to $20,000.
Yeah.
I know that's a lot of money, obviously.
No, but if it's your livelihood, it's like,
right.
it's like
they tend to be.
It's like your car if you're a
expensive
Uber driver or something. Okay, and then I've heard, violins costing like insane, like millions of dollars.
Yes.
How do people even, I hear violinists playing these, $10 million violins, but I'm like, I don't think they could actually afford to buy it. Are they just loaning them, sort of, or how does it work?
Most of the time, most violinists don't own, especially those instruments, which are,
artifacts.
They're beautiful pieces of work and art and just amazing instruments. But usually they would be on loan by a foundation, by a dealer, or some kind of connection.
I would be so scared to be like borrowing a $10 million instrument. I don't know how they like do
Well, there's a fair amount of insurance. And,
I'm sure, yeah.
It's
crazy. So do you do anything specific to take care of your violin and maintain it, sort of?
Yes, so I change the strings pretty frequently.
How frequently?
Every 2 months. And I bring the violin also when I get them, usually the strings changed. I also get the violin checked out to see if these along here, this is the seams of the instrument here, and oftentimes due to weather and changes of temperature fluctuation, the seams will open or contract. So sometimes the glue gets undone and there's a bit of vibration. So usually a luthier will put glue in the seams and check it out and make sure everything's normal. Check the string heights. It's like going to the doctor for a physical, you know.
Okay, so I follow this Instagram account called Violin Torture, and I was just curious if this is what your luthier does at all. Wait, let me see. I don't know what he does. He like, he calls himself, He calls himself a experimental luthier by night, and that's the way, that honey rich sound. That honey rich sound. So I want to ask you a little bit about Broadway, because you've played in two Broadway orchestras that I'm aware of: A Christmas Carol and Chicago the Musical, and both of them you were featured on stage, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I know with Chicago, you were playing in it for a long time. You were, I think, for about 2 years leading up until the pandemic and Broadway shut down. So you were a sub, which means whenever the violinist would want to take off, you would play the show. But it was very frequent. You would play multiple nights a week. So why?
In Broadway, you can sub out up to 50% of the shows per year. Given that there are 8 shows a week, that's a large number of shows. On average, I was playing about 3 to 5 shows a week.
So I know these like Broadway pit musician jobs are very coveted. So why are they so coveted?
Because there's job stability.
Yeah.
Aside from the very scary question of if the show will close. Also, the pay is very good, and there are numerous health benefits you can get from it.
Stability. And that's
stability, yeah.
Something that's,
insurance and
I guess, valuable in the music industry for sure.
Yeah.
So what's the dynamic like sort of amongst the pit musicians? I've heard that they tend to be a bit older because a lot of them have been doing it for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little about that.
So I can only speak from the experience of the shows that I've done, but in Chicago, a lot of the people who play in the show all the time they do happen to be a bit older, but they also have had very interesting careers. I love talking to, a lot of them are men, so I'll just say these guys, but about their life. A lot of these guys have had very illustrious careers, most of which were jazz careers too.
Okay, interesting.
In the late 70s and 80s, have toured with many brilliant, notable artists and bands, and made a fair amount of money playing jingles and things like that, which unfortunately these days are not a thing anymore, really. Lucrative or consistent. I love hearing about
I'm sure they got
journeys.
Good stories.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's it like playing the same music every single night? Because in a Broadway show, you're playing the same music, multiple times a day, for sometimes years. How do you continue to sort of stay inspired playing the same music?
That's something that is a bit of a challenge sometimes, but oftentimes the level of musicianship, at least in the shows that I've done, has been extremely high. So every show is different, but I always just try and find new ways of playing something, or I would try and listen for different parts and analyze stuff and transcribe it in my head. Like, I didn't realize the trombone is a major third there from the trumpet. Interesting. Also, considering the fact that it is on stage is a big plus, because you feel like you're performing and you're not just playing into some vast
hit or darkness.
Well,
and I can maybe even include a picture, but when Audrey, when in Chicago and for Christmas Carol, you were literally the musicians were on the stage with the actors, so she could be seen by the audience the whole time, so she had to sort of really be on. It wasn't just you could stop and
seen
scratch
and
your
heard
butt on stage or whatever.
You can't do any butt scratching. I mean, I guess you could, but it depends on how sneaky you are about it.
I think it's interesting what you said about it's a different show every night and the music is different every night. I've done some acting stuff, and I mean, the most I've ever done a play is for maybe 3 or 4 months long, so it's not that long, but doing it, multiple times a day for months, it would still not get boring for me, because the dynamics of the actors was always a little bit different. People would give different performances each night, and I would sometimes see certain other actors sort of check out, especially during matinee performances. That was always so disappointing to see people doing that, because I just thought that was so disgraceful. On days where there are 2 shows in one day, you have a matinee and an evening performances, a lot of times certain actors will sort of hold back their energy a little bit during the matinee performance, because they want to save it for the evening performance, because they know they have to do these 2 shows in that day. And not everyone does that, but certain people do that very noticeably. And it's not that you get a terrible show at the matinee, but you don't maybe necessarily get quite the performance you would get at the evening show. I was always I found that disgraceful. I was like, what? Come on, this is your job, is to do the best performance you can every single night. Between the shows you can relax and stuff, but you just have to do it. So I'm sure, I guess this must be the same with music too. So
I think so. I mean, always there's the question of knowing your limits and making sure you don't overdo it on the first show. But that being said, I like that feeling of just going for it pretty intensely, no matter what the situation is, despite the fact, I have something later, whatever.
Just you'll find the energy for the evening show.
There's no shortage of, there is sometimes a shortage of energy.
You'll rise to the occasion.
Exactly.
So how old were you when you started learning the violin?
I was 4.
Wow, okay, very young. And you and all of your sisters, you have 2 sisters, you guys all have perfect pitch. And I know you all started playing, I guess, when you were young too. Do you think that playing an instrument at such an early age helped develop the perfect pitch?
Yes, certainly. I do.
Oh, and if you don't know what perfect pitch is, it's if Audrey hears a note, any note, she can just recognize, that's an F sharp, without any sort of reference. Or if I say, hey, Audrey, sing the note G, she could just sing the note G. Whereas, I don't have perfect pitch. I have relative pitch, which a lot of people do have. So if I have a reference note, I can figure out what the notes are. But I can't just figure out what a note is out of thin air like she can. So, so do you think that playing an instrument at such a young age helped? It must have.
Yes, because it definitely yields itself to the developmental part of having perfect pitch. In order to have perfect pitch, as far as I'm aware, you need to have two conditions. The first being that it's passed down somehow genetically, and secondly, that you develop it.
Yeah. But neither of your parents have perfect pitch, so obviously one of them had the genetic ability, but they just never developed it at a young age.
Yes.
And perfect pitch is interesting because it's like one of the only things that you have to develop as a child. You cannot develop it as an adult. You can develop pretty close, like you could memorize how it feels in your throat to sing a certain note kind of thing, but you don't actually develop like true perfect pitch as an adult. You have to develop it as a child. You don't need to have perfect pitch, obviously, to be a musician. There's lots of incredible musicians and composers who don't have it, but it is a cool skill. And as someone who doesn't have perfect pitch, it seems like something that would be very helpful and awesome to have.
Yeah.
But okay, interesting. Did your parents train you to have perfect pitch, or not really?
So we were driving in the car one day, my family, my sisters and I, and my dad asked my sister, what key is this symphony in? And she was able to say what key it was in. And I thought, that's so cool. Yeah. I want to be able to do that. And then I'm not exactly sure the timeline of all this, but I just kind of obsessed over pitches, and I would hear a car horn or any kind of sound I would try and put into a pitch and see if I can train myself to do it. And I was able to do it after a certain amount of time. So I guess just being really
just listening to music and then
really
trying
aware
to
of
figure
it
out,
and trying to constantly.
Oh, what note is that? And then figuring it
right,
out. Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I definitely believe that you can learn an instrument at any age. But there is a difference between learning to play an instrument as a hobby versus making a career from it. Do you know any like well-known string musicians, maybe specifically classical musicians, who started learning their instrument later in life? And when I say later, I mean just not being like a 4-year-old child. You know, maybe they started as a teenager or something like that. Yeah. I mean, there are some non-classical musicians who began learning as adults that I know of. A really famous example is Wes Montgomery, who didn't start playing the guitar until he was 20. And, you know, he's one of the greatest guitar players. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but are there any classical musicians that you know of? It's okay if you don't. I'm just
I know
curious.
Of one person who started the violin at age 11.
Okay, yeah, that's
phenomenal
like,
violinist.
That's like late in the classical world.
That's a late time to start. Well, the violin too. Typically, people start anywhere from like 3 to 10, I would say.
Wow. So I have no shot. Oh well. It's okay.
You could still play.
Another lifetime.
You could still try. I mean,
for
hey,
Rosalind.
look, like there's
it's
we'll
cool.
get her started.
I've got enough things I'm trying to learn how to do still. So that is interesting though that you like 11 is like the oldest you know of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are others out there,
That's
and
crazy.
I probably don't know of people who
there are
started
definitely
later,
jazz musicians who started
absolutely
later.
Jazz musicians I think
sure.
don't usually start in a lot of these instruments, especially the woodwind instruments. Most kids don't start that until they're a little bit older anyway.
Yeah. High school band and stuff. You know?
Yeah.
So you have a nickname as the Layer Queen because one of the many things that you're very good at, and something that you've been hired a lot to do in recording sessions, like studio sessions, is you can just record layer after layer of improvised violin lines and violin pads. So let's just talk a little bit about how you do that and sort of what you're thinking about when you do it. And just to give you guys an idea of what I mean exactly by this, like let's say I've recorded a song and I already have the bass recorded and the drums and the piano and the voice. So the song is like there's already a good skeleton for the song. But then Audrey will come in the studio and she'll just, with her violin, start recording layer after layer of sort of improvised violin, and it will suddenly turn into this beautiful violin arrangement, and she's sort of just doing it on the fly, one take at a time. And it's really cool. And I'm just curious, sort of, what is your thought process while you're doing it? Are you thinking about like the chords, like, okay, here's a G minor, and I'm gonna first sort of play the chord tones of a G minor chord, and then I'm gonna play the chord tones of this chord? Or are you just sort of feeling it in the moment, like just sort of whatever you feel and hear in the moment? Or does having perfect pitch come into play at all in this? Is that even necessary? I'm just curious about the process.
Yeah, I'd say out of the processes that you just suggested, the most that rings true to me is the one where you're feeling it in the moment, it's improvised, And it's usually melodically derived. The most exciting experiences usually start with an idea. And for me, it's usually a melodic idea with what we're talking about with this layering process. And from there, it's additive. So you can, once you have an interesting melody, or you can add different harmonies to that to really enhance that, or...
and when she says additive, it's like after she records, let's say 3 layers, then she can every time she records a new layer, she's listening back to herself and all the other layers. So she can build on top of what she's already played. So it's not like you're doing each one by itself in a vacuum. So you can kind of hear it and build on top of it.
Yeah, it's kind of akin to cooking or something, with olive oil as your base and your melody, and then you add in.
It's a little more complicated than cooking with olive oil, but maybe
olive oil,
maybe for the super chefs. Yeah.
Perhaps, yeah.
Not my kind of
I would
cooking.
say that the olive oil is, in this analogy, is the melodic content, and it's kind of it's the base, and then you add in the harmony is perhaps the garlic or the onions, and then
so you'll play a melody line.
Spices
you'll improvise a melody line and then harmonize with yourself, kind of thing. Is that sort of?
Yeah, that tends to be the process.
Yeah.
I have never really discerned and dissected how I do it. You know,
we should really make a video on
that would be great.
About you just showing people, because I think it would be really cool for people to see the process of you actually doing it step by step or take by take. She does it really fast, but just seeing sort of, and maybe even discussing a little bit what you were thinking while you did each one, but just to see the process. Actually, we did a recording of Auld Lang Syne, which is on my channel, and you actually did that in that recording.
Right.
I'll put a link to that below. But that one she did like super fast in my apartment. She just was improvising these lines on top of each other, and then it sounded beautiful. So it's cool. Yeah, we'll have to make a breakdown.
That would
video
be great.
that.
I would also be interested in knowing what
you're
happens
doing.
in my mind.
You're like, I don't even know. Okay, so what are the best things about being a professional musician?
The pay.
Actually, the pay is great. That's why everybody goes into music. I was going to ask you next, what is the worst part about being a professional musician? That was probably going to be the actual answer to that one. Yeah, the music is the worst part. Following your passion is the worst part, and the pay is the best part. No, but in all seriousness, what is your favorite and least favorite part of being a musician?
In all seriousness, my favorite part about being a musician is being able to play great music with great people and having a connection with an audience.
Are there any composers that are your favorite to play?
Oh, of course. Bach, classical composers, Bach, Brahms, Beethoven, the 3 Bs. But also, so many to name. This changes weekly, and I listen to a lot of different kinds of music. Probably my favorite music to play is probably Bach.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, it's very nerve-wracking to play Bach on the violin, especially solo Bach, because it's so exposed. However, there's a rawness and a connection with it I feel is so amazing, and his music is so complex and just, I can play Bach all day. That's probably always what I go to when I don't know what to play, because of its constant challenge, and for me it's very spiritual playing it. I really think it's just incredible music.
Okay, and so what is the hardest part about being a professional musician?
Probably the lifestyle, job uncertainty, lack of job security, financial woes.
Yeah, it's very hard.
No, it sounds dramatic, but it is not the easiest lifestyle to maintain.
And another thing I know a lot of musicians deal with is like physical pain and stuff, because like you're doing this repetitive motion over and over again.
That's true.
And a lot of it's like anything, like a dancer's too. If you're always doing this, it starts to hurt your hands and your body, and so there's a lot of musicians go to physical therapy. And tell me a little bit about that too. That's also one of the hardships.
So that's something that you kind of always have to be dealing with. Some people don't ever have injuries. Me personally, I've had a couple, and
it's normal. Most people do.
I found that like working out, strength training really, really diminishes all of that. That's been really helpful for me personally.
Okay, so obviously to get to where you are as a musician, you have had to practice a lot, and practicing is something that a lot of people find very difficult, finding the discipline to practice. Do you have any practice tips?
I'd say practice slowly is probably the best practice tip, and practice with a focused purpose.
What do you mean by that exactly?
So rather than playing something a million times, just for me, I think like troubleshooting as to what's the difference between what I hear in my head and what's coming out, and that difference, that's a lot of troubleshooting.
And you don't want to do that?
No, you definitely want to troubleshoot and try and figure out what it is that's causing that. And actually recording yourself is probably, it can be torturous at times to listen to yourself. But you really learn, I feel, so much about, oh, I need to do this here. This is why this isn't working, or this is slightly out of tune, or, or whatever the problem or something that's irking you. I find that listening via a recording is a really useful way to try and figure out the problem, especially for those who aren't in school anymore or may not have constant vigilance with teachers overlooking them.
Yeah. I like that idea of recording. That's an interesting...
And practicing the music slowly so that you know what action is happening at what times, these intersection points that allows the sound to happen, I think is really instrumental, because when you figure that out... and obviously you start to speed it up, because if you play it slow, it doesn't mean you can play it fast. But you really can start to really understand the mechanics of how everything cohesively works.
And what about performance advice? Do you have any advice on performing? Like nerves, how to get over nerves?
Oh, God.
Aside from taking drugs?
Taking drugs. Yeah, like just drop a bunch of acid.
What is that? Well, what is that drug everybody does take? It's
there are... like beta blockers.
Beta blockers
are
I've never
big.
done that.
Yeah, they suppress your heart.
I shouldn't know. Don't do that.
Yeah, just like they suppress your fight or flight mode.
Yeah, it makes you, so if you're feeling anxious or nervous before a performance, you can take this beta blocker and then calm down. And actually it's a lot of performers take this.
Yeah.
It's not good, but...
Well, I mean, you don't
want to get hooked on it. You don't want to
but
have to take it to perform.
Good thing is about beta blockers, they're not addictive. So, in the sense
anything that alters your state of mind can potentially be addictive.
I know, but you know what I'm trying to say. They're not.
It's not as addictive as crack.
Definitely not. Yeah, I think
Okay, but aside from any drugs, are there any drug-free ways to perform without anxiety?
Well, performing without anxiety...
Or just performing in general. It could be just about performing well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, personally, because I struggle with this all the time, and playing the violin in front of people can be really terrifying. The thing that has helped me the most has been to know that I'm probably going to be nervous, and to expect that, and to practice being nervous.
Yeah. That's really good advice.
Practice playing before a performance. Play for friends of yours. Play for colleagues, teachers, whatever. People who make you a little nervous.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Yeah, before you go in front of an audience, just find some friends, perform in front of them, so you feel what it's like playing it with the nerves and with your hands shaking. And
exactly. But then once you're out there, the best piece of advice is to just not judge what you're doing when you're doing it. I mean, because it's over. As soon as you become self-conscious, or you're making mental notes of, oh, no, I missed that there, or you're not in it, and you did all this work to get it to a place for where it is at the performance, and that is what it's going to be.
Right.
So being super hard on yourself, or being self-critical and judging yourself as it's happening is really just, and we've all had performances like that, but I think not judging yourself as it's coming out and just enjoying it is probably the best advice.
Now, you're a very talented arranger as well, so I just want to ask you very quickly, how do you arrange music? What's your process?
I found that usually you need to have an idea.
Okay. What kind of idea?
So, it could just be, I really want to do a cover of this, right? It could just be a song. Because arranging, you're taking something that's already there and modifying it in a certain way to make it your own. I listen to a lot of different kinds of music, anything from Indian music, classical Indian music, to I don't even know. Like just in a
just classical Indian music.
Yes, that's it. Tabla all day.
All day tabla. Yeah.
But I also listen to jazz. I listen to funk. I listen to classical music. I listen to
everything.
Yeah, literally everything under the sun. And oftentimes I get a lot of ideas because of certain textures that are being used. And I'm like, that would be really interesting if that was paired with this.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just like make these mental notes, or I'll hear something at a concert or on the street or something and be like, that's an interesting sound. That could be cool with this. And then later on, when I have an idea for something, they somehow mold together, and that's usually the basis for where to start anyway with arranging.
So it sounds like you're like a lot of times like instrumentation ideas are a big thing for you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually working on an arrangement right now with this. It's muted trumpet with muted trombone and flute. It's a beautiful blend of instruments.
Amplified flute.
Yeah. With
20 flutes.
20 flutes. Yeah, I'll hear these kinds of blends or something and just be like, that is really cool. And then you never know, you put them in the file cabinet of your mind, and you never know when you have this idea, this intersection point.
Like, oh, this would be really
this
cool
is really
for use
cool
for this
here.
song. Yeah.
Usually, like, it just starts with a general idea. Like, when we made Greensleeves, for instance, right?
Yeah.
When it was just like, I know we need to have this instrumental section, and I know we need to have an army of lutes, which we modified.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like certain...
Every song needs an army of lutes.
Yeah, we need an army of lutes.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, we recorded a recording of Greensleeves, and Audrey did this really epic arrangement, like truly epic, and I will put a link to that as well. It's on Spotify. You can listen to just Greensleeves by Audrey Hayes and Gracie Terzian. So definitely check it out if you want to hear some of Audrey's epic arranging skills. What is a stereotypical violinist personality? And are there any other instruments that have stereotypical personalities?
Oh, man. Well, I'd say probably violinists tend to be kind of fiery or,
neurotic? Or no? Is
like
that not
itchy maybe is a better term.
It's very competitive to be a violinist. Right?
Yeah. But there's so many, but I know so many different people who
of course, there's lots of chill violinists.
You want like a sure.
I'm asking for
I'm
the
not
stereotype.
necessarily chill myself.
I want the stereotype.
I would maybe a competitive, fiery personality.
Okay.
Usually also a little mischievous.
Mischievous? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is...
Is it mischievous or mischievous? No, I'm like...
Mischievous.
It is?
I think so.
Okay. Man, I've been saying mischievous my entire life.
Really?
Yes.
It might be mischievous. I don't know.
Well, I don't know now either.
I've always said mischievous. But
well, yeah.
It looks like mischievous, but... Let us know in the comments. Is it mischievous or mischievous? What do you guys think the stereotypical violinist personality is?
That's a better question.
I don't think Audrey's giving a good answer for this.
I'm giving a very PC answer right now.
I think, I feel like from my perspective, the average violinist is like, or at least my idea of like a stereotypical violinist is sort of like high maintenance, super competitive, like really intense and serious. Obviously,
that's a good stereotype.
Obviously, that's not true, of course, all the time. I mean, lots of cool, chill violinists everywhere, but like, because it's so fierce and competitive to become like a violinist, first chair violin is like the most coveted seat in an orchestra, right? So it's like I feel like the most high stakes, sort of intense, neurotic instrument possible.
Yeah, plus given the nature of this thing, I mean, it's
so
very,
high,
very,
and it's like you just...
Yeah, everything is super detailed.
You can hear any mistake so easily.
Yeah.
It's like, you have to just be like insane to play it.
Yeah, I'm insane.
What are some other good musician instrument stereotypes? I feel like I have to think about this.
Oof. I always imagine tuba players to be like 400 pounds and walking around.
Well, you have to be
tuba.
pretty strong to play a tuba, so.
But that's really not true.
Yeah.
Well, actually, all the tuba players that I personally know are very skinny.
They're
fit people.
Well, they're carrying that tuba all day. They gotta be fit. Singers have a pretty...
Singers, I think, are a fun stereotype.
Yeah, there's a lot of like stereotypes about singers that they're divas, and
because they're featured singing in the elevator with you.
Yeah, there's also a stereotype that they don't know a lot about music too. Like, they don't understand music theory or what's happening in music and stuff, which is true sometimes, but it's not necessarily, doesn't mean they're not great singers. So,
of course, yeah.
You don't have to know that stuff to be a great musician or great singer. So, but it's not always true. Yeah. A lot of drummers are like very eccentric in a good way. What's a pianist stereotype?
Cerebral.
Cerebral? Yeah, that's fair.
Kind of.
Let me know your musician stereotypes in the comments. This is all in good fun, by the way, guys.
No hate.
No hate. Only love. These are just funny stereotypes. Now, you have your own YouTube channel that you just started, and you started recording film music for violins, because there are lots of sort of well-known violin songs in films, and you've been recording the covers of those and arrangements. What inspired you to begin doing film music?
I just think that, I would hear stuff in film all the time and just be so taken with the music. And then especially with the violin sound, it's so cinematic, and especially these old films. Yeah, there really is a lot of very special violin music that's been written for film, so it's it's really worth performing and doing. I think it's a really cool project and idea you're doing. Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun.
What's the hardest piece of music you've ever had to play?
Oh gosh. Ever had to play?
Yeah, or tried to play.
Probably, the Brahms Violin Concerto is pretty difficult and challenging. It's rewarding, though. It's pretty masterful and magnificent when you can play it. A lot of solo Bach, I'd say, is difficult to play because of what I mentioned before about it being exposed. Mm-hmm. I'd say technically probably the Brahms Violin Concerto.
Cool. So I think every musician has like one song that they just like hate playing. Mine is probably Fly Me to the Moon, but do you have one? What's yours?
Oh God, Fly Me to the Moon. I could see why you would really dislike that. You know what I really don't like to play? Pachelbel's Canon.
Really? You've had to play it too many times.
I've played that a lot. Yeah.
What's a good piece of advice that a teacher gave you once?
Stop judging everything you're doing.
Okay, so that is it for today, Audrey. Thank you so much for joining me here today. You guys should definitely go check out Audrey Hayes' YouTube channel. I'll put a link to it in the description below. She just started it, and it's really, she has some already just gorgeous arrangements of her playing and singing as well there. Thank you, Audrey, so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. What a treat.
If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Tell us what you thought, what your favorite musician stereotypes are. Could be about the instrument that you play yourself, what you think your own instrument stereotype is. And if you are new to my channel as well, be sure to subscribe. I post one video a week, and I would love to have you here. I'm sure you'll see more of Audrey here on my channel as well, so thank you again.
To be back. Yes, thank you for having me.